no coach in the history of the NCAA is going to get into a crunch time situation and say, hey, you know what? You're a better player, and I trust you more in this situation to make better decisions of what we have to do. But you scored a 30 on the beep test back in August where that girl scored a 40, so I'm going to put her in instead. That's such a bullshit statement. Like, just think about how insane that is.
Welcome into the Train with the Best podcast, a podcast by Fit Pros for anyone who loves the world of fitness and wants to understand it better. I'm Craig Hoffman, personal trainer, performance coach, and media personality.
And I'm Chris Gorres, a 15-year strength and conditioning coach, master trainer, and international educator.
And today, Chris, we're going to pick up on our conversation from last week. We're going to talk about conditioning. You've been thinking since we talked last week, and there's some stuff we want to get to in regards to making sure that the conditioning that you're doing as an athlete or the conditioning you're prescribing as a trainer is actually working towards the goals that you want to achieve or that your athletes want to achieve, and why some of the common ones, especially in the athletic space, might be inferior to better options. That, of course, would be by definition they're inferior to better options, but you get what I mean. We will help you. We will give for you the better options. But I guess first, Chris, we do have a bit of news.
That's right. Are we ready? Share. We're ready to announce this now.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's already been announced, but not on this podcast.
Right.
We announced it on the place that it's going to exist on Thursday afternoon. And that is that I am now going to be doing a daily sports radio show. Of course, I think most people listening know that I am a sports radio host, or, was by trade before I ever got into fitness, and have continued kind of parallel career paths since 2016. And at various points, and that's when I started training, was 2016. And at different points, the different things have carried different weights. At some points, the fitness side of things has carried more weight for me. At sometimes, the fitness or the radio side has carried more weight for me. And recently, it's actually been the heaviest fitness it's ever been. But there was an opportunity that presented itself with the radio stations that I work with. Odyssey is the owner of those stations, AUDACY, which I tell you so you can download the Odyssey app and listen. But, we own two stations here in D.C., 106.7 The Fan, who I used to work full-time for and still was doing a lot of work for, and the Team 980, who I was also doing a lot of fill-in work for. And I'm going to be taking over the afternoon drive spot, 3 to 6, on the Team 980, Monday through Friday. The show is called The Hoffman Show. Very original name. And
that's big time.
I'm excited to do it, man. And you and everyone else has been very, very kind, saying very nice things, and that feels good. So that's nice.
I mean, that's pretty big time to be like, hey, I'm Craig Hoffman from The Hoffman Show, right? Like, that's pretty dope. Who was in that spot? Because I mean, I don't listen to 980 anymore, obviously, because I'm no longer in that area. But I used to listen to it a lot when I was driving around a lot up in D.C. Who used to be in that spot? Was that the Chad Dukes spot?
So Dukes was on 106.7 The Fan in that time spot. Most recently, Chris Russell and Pete Medhurst were in that spot, and they are shifting from afternoons to 9 a.m. to noon, which that is open because Travis Thomas left for a great job for him up in Boston. He's going to be working for Trav is working for Nesson, the New England Sports Network, doing a TV show up there.
Good for him.
So that spot opened, and luckily enough, when I was having the conversations with my boss, like I told him, and this is relevant to the fitness side of it, is like I want to keep training, and most of my clients are in the morning. I can't really do 9 to noon, but if you're willing to work with me on a time slot, and other people are open, and however those conversations went, I don't really know. But on my end of it, it was like, if you're willing to work with me for this, and if this becomes available, I would love to talk to you about doing it. And whatever conversations happened, and now here we are.
There you go.
I've got that 3 to 6, and so I'm condensing my training down to 3 days a week, and then the occasional weekend. Mondays and Fridays, I'm giving myself to just focus on radio / be able to do things like do work for this company / this podcast. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'll get up, same old 6:30 alarm, train at 7 a.m. and come back, gather myself, eat some food, prepare, and go to a radio show from 3 to 6 in the afternoon.
There you go. Well, I'm happy for you, man. This is I know this is what you do. I know you're going to be great at it, and I know you're going to kill it. And I know you're going to get a lot of people listening to that show. So I'm excited for you.
I appreciate it, man. It was funny because one of the things that I talked to my boss about was, because you try to figure out, like, what is it that makes a show yours, right? Like, what is it that makes this podcast ours? What are the things that we talk about, the things that we reference? Same thing on that. And I was like, is there a place for the fitness? Like, is there like a Fitness Friday segment once a month where people call in for their fitness questions? He like gave it a lot of thought because it's the kind of thing where it's like, maybe, but we ultimately decided probably not. So if you want fitness talk, this is going to be the place.
This is it. Yeah.
This is, but that's the beauty of this is like, like the beauty of a podcast versus, which is a narrow cast, very niche versus like a broadcast is like, in some ways we pick the audience here. Like everyone listening is listening because they want our take on fitness. They want to learn about conditioning. They want to learn about whatever. There's an expectation when you're going into an established like broadcast entity, like, okay, I'm going to talk about Washington football, the Wizards, the NBA, the NFL, if the Nats ever are good again, I'll talk about them, all that kind of stuff. And so, I'm glad that I have this outlet and that I still get to do this. And I'm staying in training because that balance, I think, is actually good for me in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be great. I mean, again, if there was a fitness segment on there, great. It doesn't have to be. I think, there'll be times during the year where training questions come up, which are relevant to whatever's going on, especially in the Washington, D.C. sports world. As you talk about training camps and rehabs from injuries and all those other things. But, I think this will be good.
Yeah, no, it'll definitely be a good time. And we'll have like a nice cast of contributors on the show, so it won't always be just me yapping,
right?
Which is also nice. I like having people with me. I like to bounce off ideas off of people. It's what I enjoy the most about this show, and excited that this one is still going to continue to go. We might summer schedule a little bit over the next month or so, but we're going to try to continue to go every week until at least the wedding. I will be unavailable towards the end of August.
Right.
Scotland. Maybe you'll have a guest host for once.
Maybe. Yeah. Hey.
Maybe figure that out.
A lot to learn.
All right. When just quick news off the top. When we get back, we'll dive into the main part of the conversation today, which is about conditioning. The do's and don'ts, if you will, of conditioning. Next on the Train with the Best podcast. The Train with the Best podcast is brought to you by Super Coffee. And we just got a brand new coffee maker espresso machine for our apartment. And I'm pretty psyched about it. And I'm pretty psyched about it for a lot of reasons. Like, obviously, getting to make my own cool coffee at home is very exciting, and it's convenient, and it saves money and all those kinds of things. But it also means that the Super Coffee grounds that I've had, now I have a place to really use them and also to share the love, because I had like a little pour over thing that was individual, and now I can just make a pot of coffee. And if we have friends over, we can be like, hey, do you want coffee? And I can be like, hey, here's this delicious coffee. And they don't even have to know it's Super Coffee. Of course, I would tell them, because why would I deprive them of that knowledge? And by the way, what did I just say? It's convenient, it's delicious. All these things that I said of why I'm excited to get this coffee maker, that's also just what Super Coffee is. And you don't have to make it. That's the convenient part. It comes in a ready-to-drink bottle. They've got all kinds of things. So whether you're ready to drink, whether you're a nice pot of coffee at home, if you're looking for some creamer to go in, really either one, they've got you covered. Anything coffee adjacent, one-stop shop. DrinkSuperCoffee.com. Use the code TRAINWITHTHEBEST and you get 25% off your first order. That's TRAINWITHTHEBEST at DrinkSuperCoffee.com. The Train with the Best podcast is brought to you by Jakku, a personal speed and agility measurement system. Jakku has eliminated the need for expensive timing gate system, and they killed the stopwatch. Now you can test speed, agility, and reaction time with just the Jakku speed wearable sensor and your phone. That's it. Nothing is easier or more accurate. Way easier than those gate systems, way less expensive than those gate systems, and it's way more accurate than a stopwatch. I know a lot of coaches, you're like, I don't know, my stopwatch is pretty accurate. You know what's more accurate than you? A machine. A machine that has technology that's patented and is proven to work each and every time. Now, whether you're measuring reaction time, set up a short gate and see how fast someone reacts to something, to just getting a super accurate time over time, rep after rep, set after set, continually consistent timing device, There's nothing better than Jakku. And that the really, to me, the coolest thing about Jakku, what sets it apart, is not only can it be used for straight line speed like the gate systems can. Again, I don't know why you use an expensive gate system when you can get a Jakku, but like, fine. We've used it forever. We trust it. Cool. Let me see your gate do a 5-10-5. Let me see your gate do a custom drill that you made up that you've been trying to get accurate timing on for years. Let me see your gate system do anything that is not straight linear speed. Jakku does. So quit messing around. Go right now. Jakku.com/discount/TWTB for 20% off. That's Jakku.com/discount/TWTB. Continuing on the Train with the Best podcast, the meat of the show. So last week we talked about conditioning. We talked about the role it took on, say, for Stephen Curry and the way it helped elevate his game and elevated the Warriors to a championship. He was able to identify the goals that he needed, the weak points in his game, use strength and conditioning to round them out, and you see the results. And obviously in athletics, those goals can become clearly defined. Yet in the athletic world, often the ways in which we test conditioning specifically, nevertheless train for it, are, let's just be kind and call them dated. If we want to be perhaps more poignant, we could call them stupid and nonsensical. But Chris, you obviously work in the soccer space a lot, and I think perhaps the best example exists in this space. The beep test has been the standard for soccer conditioning for years, or for soccer conditioning test for years. Yet, let's just say you're not a big fan. Why, and what could, let's just start with that. Why? How did that become the thing, and why is it such a bad idea?
So I've kind of come full circle probably 2 or 3 times on the beep test. So for those who don't know what the beep test is, you did this when you were probably in middle school PE or elementary school PE. You run down, you run back before it beeps, and you have a certain amount of rest, and then the intervals get faster and faster. And it's something that, when I started out my career as a strength and conditioning coach, and I wanted to help people, my whole thing was train better, right? Move better, train smarter, not harder, right? And this was something that, okay, you're going to get into shape, but is that making you a better player, right? Just like the same reason why there are certain lifts that, yeah, it's great if we can do, but it's not like the end all be all, right? I don't need you to be able to be the best at this lift because it may not translate, or at a certain point it doesn't translate anymore. We don't benefit that much. So I would look at it and say, this is a stupid test. This isn't a great way for you to predict performance on the field. It's not even a great way to predict fitness on the field, right? And there's so many different reasons why, but like mainly because that's not what the game is like. The game isn't you run in a straight line from a cone to another cone without having to adjust, without having to react to something, without having to think about something, without having to manage some sort of decision that you have to make, without having to communicate, without having to be on the same page with your other teammates, right? So especially in a soccer game, right, like that's not what the 85th minute looks like, right? So that's why I hated the test, because it's like there are so many different things that we can do that's going to better prepare you for the game so that we can perform better than this silly beep test, right? So that was where I was at in the beginning. And then you start to develop relationships with some of these coaches and understand that, okay, this is an accountability test. It's not a fitness test. It's an accountability test, right? And you start to realize, okay, this isn't necessarily where we're going to judge somebody's fitness, but it's going to help us judge what were you doing this off season. Did you take things seriously? Did you keep your body ready? Did you keep moving? Did you prepare yourself for this preseason? Or did you sit around? Did you go to the beach and hang out with your friends and, kind of goof off and not take anything seriously, right? So the accountability part of the test, I firmly believe in. I get it. I understand. We have to have something that's simple, that's going to hold kids accountable so that when they report back to camp in the fall, hey, I did what I was supposed to do, right? However, what's happening, which is why I say I go full circle, is now kids are
a true full circle, though, not the one where people actually did a 180 and they call it a full circle.
Yeah.
Which is very
so
common.
back to full circle.
We've actually gone all the way around.
All the way around. Back to it is like, okay, yeah, you made this an accountability thing, but now, it especially on the women's side, and I will say this because I've seen it and I've experienced this. The women take it a lot more seriously than the men do. And a freshman coming into her first college soccer season is going to take it a lot more seriously because she doesn't know. All she knows is the coach sent her this stupid packet to do, right? And she thinks she has
they
to.
all hate that packet so much.
This
By
packet,
the way, so do we.
Yeah,
the packets are typically terrible.
The packets are dumb. I'll say that the packets are dumb. They have way too much in there. It's confusing. It's a ton of reps and not a whole lot of intensity. It's just getting you ready for nothing, actually. But anyways, the argument to that is these coaches write that workout that way because they know that a kid is maybe going to do half of it, right? So I don't know. Maybe build a better culture and communicate with your players what you're trying to do. But
right.
So going back to the accountability test, right? Because yes, we have to hold people accountable, but what people are holding themselves accountable to is the test, not the game,
right.
Not development, not making themselves a better player or preparing themselves for the season. What they're doing is running the test over and over and over again during the summer because they got to get 35 on the beep test or 36 on the beep test, and they think it's the end all be all. So even if they do hold themselves accountable, even if they do go out there and work out 3-4 times a week, they're just preparing for the test. And now you have players who, they're going to come in, they're going to be fit at that test, but they're not going to be fit at anything else. They're not going to be better players. You know what I mean? And so it's starting to be not just a bad test, but it's unproductive because the people who are holding themselves accountable are getting worse as players. They're not getting faster, right? All they're doing is preparing their body because the first day that we get back, we're going to do the beep test. And it's such a bullshit test. It's not even preparing you for the season, you know? And then what happens? Later on in the year, the best players play on the field anyway. That's always what happens. No coach in the history of the NCAA is going to get into a crunch time situation and say, hey, you know what? You're a better player, and I trust you more in this situation to make better decisions of what we have to do. But you scored a 30 on the beep test back in August where that girl scored a 40, so I'm going to put her in instead. That's such a bullshit statement. Like, just think about how fucking insane that is, right? But that's how these girls are out there killing themselves trying to get 40 on the beep test and not realizing this is making you a worse player.
Right, because that's time spent when you could be practicing whatever is actually the hole in your game. That's not to say that being in better condition can't make you a better player. We 100%. Literally talked about that last week with Curry. So I want to circle back on that. But I also think like the opposite is true as well, or the inverse is true as well. If you're a better player, it's easy to be better conditioned because the game is easier for you. Right? If you're a smarter player, you understand where you need to be. You're not going to waste a bunch of energy doing a bunch of stuff that's nothing but a waste of energy. Yep. And so I do think that, like, when you think of a conditioning drill, because as you were talking, I was also thinking of other places I've seen this. And I think of a guy that we both have a ton of respect for, a guy you worked for, Chad Englehart at Washington Football. Mm-hmm. And I think back to training camps, and there would be days where they wanted to do extra conditioning. And they would just get everybody on the line, and, you know, they'd have either, I think the way that Chad did the drill was like DBs and receivers had to run a certain length. And like everyone had the same time. O lineman, D lineman had a shorter length. And then I guess everyone else was in the middle, or running backs might've been with the wide receiver, whatever the groupings were. Yep. But you had to, you know, say one group had to run 30 yards, one group 25, 120. And it's there and back on the line. And if you think about it in terms of football, when everyone's tired, do you really want to run more plays because conditioning, when that's when you're at highest injury risk? No, you strip away all the other factors and you just have them run. And I understand that to a point, but is that actually going to help you? And like, I'm asking this, I would love to know Chad's response to this. And I'm sure you have thoughts, and I'm curious to yours. Like, is that the best way to actually do it? Or could you ramp up that drill? But also, you know, in training camp, Chad's dealing with 90 players. So there's a scalability factor where it's just like, You want to know what people won't fuck up? Running to there and back in a certain amount of time. And so there's like, in a team setting, there's a scalability to something like the beep test that I, on some level, understand, but I do think that your point like reigns true over that. There's a lot of room in the middle to find something that is superior to the simplicity of the beep test, that is also a better measure of player fitness and also could lead to better training outcomes or better training in pursuit of doing well on said fitness test that actually would help the player be a better player.
Right. And it's all about setting priorities in your training program, right? Like the other day, I love to use this analogy because I do this a lot with my training programs. The other day, you posted something on, I think it was Twitter, where you had to select a team. And you got a $4 category, a $3 category, a $2 category, a $1 category, and you've got $10 to spend, right?
Right.
Well, what's happening is in the off season, you've got athletes spending $9 on the beep test, where really you should be spending $1 on the beep test and $9 on decision making skills, all that other stuff, right? Similar to football, right? Like we get extra conditioning because hey, like this is a time where we just want to see who's going to give that extra effort, right? The real conditioning happens in like 2-minute periods, right? Like we'll have our 2-minute period, and that's when people have to know, hey, these are the assignments, these are where I'm supposed to line up, these are the situations that I'm in, these are how many timeouts that I have. There was a very, very popular, or not popular, there was a very notorious play this past season where Dallas thought that they had enough time to spike the ball. They didn't, right? Those are things that you go over, but like it's the mental side of things that, hey, like we're going to go over these different scenarios, and this is how much time we have to have on the clock to spike. This is how much time we have to have on the clock for a rush field goal or whatever. But all that stuff matters. And then what you'll see is the people who don't understand those things, they get tired a lot quicker because they're running around. Like you said, they're running extra. They don't know where they're supposed to line up. So now they got to go across the formation or whatever, right? So. Right.
Not to mention the mental energy, and we all know how exhausting it is when like you have to use a lot of brain power as opposed to knowing exactly what you're going to do and executing it seamlessly.
Yeah, and the pressure of the situation. Because if you're running around in a 2-minute drill, then it's a close game, and this is going to make or break. You know, this is going to determine who wins the ball game, right? So you see the guys who can keep their cool, who are not huffing and puffing because, hey, like I've been here before, I felt this pressure.
Right.
You know, I'm good here. Right. So again, there's just so much when you think about what's really happening at the end of a ball game, whether it be football, soccer, whatever it is, you know, there's what's happening at the end of the ball game, which is really important and has almost nothing to do with what's happening in a beep test. And there's the conditioning that's going to make you sustainable and maintainable throughout the season, which we know is strength. Right. And that's why I'm saying, like, God, we're spending $9. We're spending $9 on the beep test, where that's such a small part of the way that you're going to perform, not just in a game, but throughout the course of a season.
Right. And I think back to some of the athletes I trained, and they would come to me so nervous about the beep test.
So nervous.
And I just went, yeah, we're not going to worry about it, and you'll be fine. And it was great. And they were like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, you're going to have to do some running, like, on your own, but I don't want you to go crazy. I want you, and the thing is with soccer too, like especially soccer. Now it's a little different when they get into college, but like when they're in high school and they're playing all the freaking time because the AAU and high school schedules are literally too much. Yep. Like you're getting that running and stuff in practice, you're gonna be fine. You get into college and they're not playing off season, but like they probably are playing pickup. They probably are playing something somewhere. And doing their own skill work and all that kind of stuff. So you're going to get some of that running in, whatever, but like, don't worry about it. I'm going to make you stronger, and everything's just going to be a lot easier because you're going to be stronger. You're going to be more powerful. You're going to be more explosive. You're going to be quicker. The work we do in here will make the beep test easier. Don't worry about it. And you get to the end of the summer and it's like, all right, hey, we're about a month out, or we're 3 weeks out. Let's go make sure. And then they go crush the beep test, and it's like easier than, or 300-yard shuttles, I think was the athlete I'm thinking about. That was her conditioning test, and she was like, "Wow, that was easy." I'm like, "Good, you'll be fine."
Yeah.
Like, congratulations, we didn't have to train for the beep test the entire summer. we were, But we were also making you better at everything, and thus the beep test was just easier by nature.
Right. So again, full circle, I hate it. It's not a good test. I understand the reason for it, which is to hold kids accountable, which is important because you've got 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who are coming back. You have no idea what they were doing over the summer. Here's something that's going to hold them accountable because they know, hey, when you report back in August 1st or whatever it is, this is what we're doing, and we're going to see what you were up to in the summer. But now you're just getting kids who spend their summer training just for that test instead of actually getting ready for the season.
So if you get hired at a D1 women's soccer program, strength and conditioning coach, and the head coach comes to you and is like, I need a conditioning test. What do you say? And that could include, we're not going to have a conditioning test, but like, what would you do that would be, in your mind, better?
Well, look, if you're at a D1 school that has all the resources, right?
Yeah.
Then we have access to tracking all of the data in a session, right? How much distance was covered, how many sprints did they get into, what was their average speed, what were their max speeds, this and that, right? For me, my thing would be how many times can you repeat max speed, right? Like, so the way that I would do it is have some sort of like 40-yard, 50-yard sprint, all out freaking sprint. And we time that, we know what your max speed is and how many reps can you achieve at max speed or within 95% of max speed, right? Like what
kind of rests?
I would give them full recovery. I would give them a minute and a half, 2-minute rest, right? No more than 3 minutes probably, but yeah, blast it out there and let's see if you can do it again. And just max speed stuff. And then that along with what I'm seeing when we do drills, right? Like you still have to use your eyes here, which is what I was saying, going back to football, 2-minute drill, 2-minute period is our ultimate like conditioning test. That's it, because that's the game. We're practicing scenarios, we're practicing situations. So if we play a lot of small-sided and we're getting these reps in and out, and I'm watching these girls huffing and puffing, or I'm watching these guys huffing and puffing, and and I'm using what I see and matching that up with the data from what I see from repeated max efforts, that should give me enough, right? But yeah. I also understand that there are a lot of great strength and conditioning coaches that are out there that work for coaches that are and the coaches came from the old school. This is what they did, and they said, no, we're doing the beep test, so make everybody do the beep test, So
right.
It's not always on. It's not always on. What I should say is, for those of you who are out there who are listening to this, it's not always on the strength and conditioning coach that decides that.
Right. You'd hope that the head coach leaves that to the strength and conditioning coach, but chances are they're a former player who did the beep test, and so they're like, well, we have to do the beep test. Right. And breaking people of that is not a good time.
Right.
The Train with the Best podcast is brought to you by Momentous. And I got to say, since we had the episode, at this point, it's like 15 episodes ago, with Patrick Dixon, the director of applied sports science for Momentous, I've been really on it with my supplement game. Multivitamin every single day, Brain Drive every single day. I've been really on it with the vitamin D and magnesium along with my elite sleep at night. And last week was an incredible test of just how important that supplementation is. I didn't get a ton of sleep. I had a bunch of stuff going on, and later nights, early mornings, and my sleep is a little more inconsistent. And yet my Whoop recoveries in the green basically all week. I was stunned because there were some days I didn't even get 6 hours of sleep. But I got the most out of my sleep thanks to Elite Sleep, and my body was able to do the kind of repair work that it needs to because it had all the vitamins and minerals that it needs thanks to the Momentous supplementation. It is such a great way that they've set up their website now too, is they've added all these new products from the Huberman Lab, and they explain what they do and best use. So go build yourself a routine, build yourself a regimen, and then stock up. LiveMomentous.com. Use the code TRAINWithTheBest25 on your first subscription order, and you'll get 25% off that order plus 15% off all of the refills. You're going to feel the difference. Go to LiveMomentous.com. TRAINWithTheBest25 is the code for 25% off your first order. The Train with the Best podcast is brought to you by Blaze Pod. And did you see the viral Blaze Pod video that went around last week? You've heard of bending it like Beckham, but can you plank like the Beckhams? Yeah, David and Victoria Beckham doing a little plank competition with BlazePod. And it was really fun because for me, I actually had some clients that I did unknowingly before I ever saw the Beckham video, did the same exact drill with, and they sent it to me and were like, hey, I guess we're just David and Victoria Beckham now. And I was like, well, who's who? That's a conversation for a different day. The point is, whether you're using it for what I think most people know BlazePod for, speed, agility, reaction training, or as a really fun way to spice up other exercises from single leg RDLs to planks. BlazePod is a way to enhance your training. Timing, reaction, adding that mental stimulus to any number of ways in which you train. It is a phenomenal way to enhance training during a session, to get your body warmed up, or to really make your athletes, especially if they're sport athletes, make decisions in a finisher when they're tired that will simulate those late game scenarios where execution is everything and the game is on the line. So go to blazepod.com, use the code TWTB for 15% off, and get yourself a pair of BlazePods. Go to blazepod.com and use TWTB for 15% off. When you talk about training for the actual conditioning, though, how do you approach that? Because that is actually the more important discussion.
Yeah.
Like, these tests are really important, obviously, but the more important discussion is like, how do you actually get someone in quote unquote game shape? And to me, like, you play games. And this is where the mix between sport coaching, strength conditioning has to be really good. Is I want the time as a strength and conditioning coach to work on mechanics for quickness, speed, agility, all that kind of stuff. We want to make someone more efficient as a mover, make them a better mover, perhaps train the decision-making and the mental side in very controlled drill settings. I want a chance to obviously make them stronger.
Yeah.
In order to get them in game shape, I need them to use all of those things in game settings. And that is, and we can consult on, work to rest ratios, all these kinds of things to try to be smart about it. But at the end of the day, if you want to get someone in game shape, they need to be in game scenarios. Right. And as a strength conditioning coach, that's not my area of expertise.
Right. Well, yes and no. Because you can watch it.
They're specific, but there are things you can do along the way. So there's a balance. Like, there are layers here.
What I would say is, like, I need you to play the game that you play at an intensity that is cranked all the way up. I've got to get you used to that. Now, maybe you can only sustain that for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, work your way up to a minute, 2 minutes, right? But the intensity has to be there, right? Because if you lost a game 3-0, that's it. The game is over after 90 minutes. You don't get to extend it and be like, oh, well, I bet if we played this game for 3 more hours, we would outlast you. No, that's not the game. The game happens now, right? Like you don't get to extend the quarters or the halves of the games because you feel like you could last longer. That's not the game. It's who can last longer at that intensity, right? Which is not 90 minutes, right? There's only going to be certain moments in a game that actually determine the outcome, right? Same thing with football, right? We're not running for 60 minutes. Like every play is 4 or 5 seconds long, and it's at the highest intensity that you can imagine, right? So when we are training our athletes, we are training them at the intensity, not for the volume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's why, that's where some of the different methods can come in, some of the different types of ways you can train, it's specific to conditioning, like your cardio levels, right? Like, if you're a quick burst kind of athlete, if you're a football player, something like assault bike sprints, or like all out efforts on the assault bike for 5 to 10 seconds, repeat those a bunch of times. Like that's going to be a really great, a great conditioning level. Can you, and by the way, something like an assault bike is great because it has a measurement tool, so you can see the wattage. Like, all right, let's see, like, just like you said, okay, let's do all out. Can you stay above 95% threshold? We can do that on an assault bike too, not just sprint with a Jocko, for instance, as a timing device.
Right.
I know that you like the rower for your soccer players. Yep. And 300-meter rows, for your pros, things like that. And those kinds of things are great too, because a lot of the sport athletes that we're talking about, pretty much all the ones that we're talking about, football, soccer, basketball specifically, they're all running sports.
Yep.
Like if they are also doing skill work, they are on their feet doing really hard work a lot. And so if you can do things like a bike, the Spark, you guys have those at Onyx, the Spark trainers. Yep. You can do things like a rower. It's a chance to crank the intensity while also not putting more ground contacts into an athlete that's already getting a ton of ground contacts.
Right. Yeah, rowing is one of my favorites. Swimming would be my favorite, but not everybody can swim.
Yeah,
and then it becomes
talk about inefficiency. Yeah. And by the way, sometimes inefficiency can be good for cardio training because it actually makes you work harder. But man, is it not fun?
Yeah, it's just from the workout perspective, it's great. Like I love getting especially like the football players in the pool because it's such a great workout for them. It's such a change of pace. They get in the pool. The guys that can swim splash around, have fun. But the guys who can't swim, you can see on their face a level of anxiety, like, am I going to die in this swimming pool? And they're not, because it's 4 feet deep and they're 6'6", so they're not.
Right.
But for somebody that doesn't know how to swim, that's a very anxious feeling, right? So I've learned that over the years that swimming, as much as I love it, it may not be the best option for somebody who doesn't know how to swim or isn't proficient or isn't comfortable in the water.
Yeah, and I would also be very communicative with the team full of athletes on swimming, considering the social history of swimming in America. We don't need to get too deep into that now, but like I would be very communicative if you are considering swimming on a team full of athletes. But I mean, it's actually something. This is a little bit of an aside, and we can wrap up with this. But like when I have folks row, Gen Pop, or athletes, I have them row. I always have this mental battle with myself of like, should I fix their form? Because at the end of the day, them being able to row better is not actually the goal.
Right.
Them creating the intensity and getting the heart rate training and the conditioning training is the goal. But of course, everyone wants to get better. How much coaching of like, all right, rowing, I mean, not like you're going, slow-mo film breakdown.
Yeah,
but like, how much coaching do you do on some of these conditioning drills where when they actually are worse at the drill, if you will, you are pushing the intensity higher because they are being more inefficient, and thus you would actually theoretically being working closer to your goal.
I coach them up. I coach them up.
That's what I always default to. So that makes me feel
it's hard to not coach them up, first of all, and there are thresholds. So as always, the answer depends. But you're always going to let's say that there's a level of proficiency from scale of 1 to 5. I don't care to make them a 5. Even when I'm training a football player, a soccer player, a basketball player, when I'm teaching them sprint mechanics, I am not going to turn them into Usain Bolt. I don't care to, right? But can I teach them something? Can I give them something to focus on? And it's that value of like, hey, can you learn a skill, right? Like Dennis Logan talked about teaching linemen how to sprint, get into a 40-yard sprint stance. Like, yeah, you're never going to do this. This isn't for you. But it's not the value of can you run this 40-yard dash and have great mechanics. It's can you learn a new skill, right? So what we just talked about was that whole thing of like mental focus and attention to detail, right? So what better way than to show them something like a row where, hey, this is going to be hard as hell, and I need you to hit these times and hit these distances and hit this wattage, but you're not going to do it by just coming out here and trying harder and biting down and like closing your eyes and going as hard as you can. You've still got to focus and pay attention to detail. So that's why I think that's important.
No, that's great. That's a really great answer. All right. If you have any questions on any of this stuff, go ahead and hit us on Instagram at TrainWithTheBest21 or on Twitter at TWTB21. You can follow Chris at Trainer Gorres, me at Craig_Hoffman on Instagram, at Trainer Gorres, at Craig Hoffman on Twitter. Anything else, Chris, before we head up on out of here?
That's it, man. I appreciate you guys watching on YouTube. I know I'm out here in the Sunday summer attire, right? Gonna take the boys to the pool today, so Yeah, I appreciate all of our listeners and viewers on YouTube.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I would be remiss and / kicked out of my own house if I did not pass along from Rachel. Inherently, make sure you put on sunscreen. Protect yourself. All right, that's it, and that's all. If you like what you hear, subscribe. If you don't, just subscribe anyway. Then don't. Actually, no. You should listen. You should listen. You're gonna learn to love us. All right, we're done. We'll see you next week. Thanks for checking out this video. If you like it, we got more. Make sure you subscribe right here on YouTube and check out our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, or even our website. It's got everything there. All the links you could possibly want. Go check it out. Trainwiththebest21.com.